And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at Villages of Valeria from Daily Magic Games. Now, Daily Magic already had a game that came out last year called Valeria Card Kingdoms. This is a completely different game. It's set in the same universe. I'm actually pretty opposed to companies doing this. I don't understand it at all. I understand the point of branding, but I think it'd be more important to call this something else and then call it a Valeria game in a corner. But this is confusing if you own one. You think, is this an expansion for the other? Do they work together? Are they the same? No, they're extremely different games. And of course, they have another game coming out, Quests of Valerians, etc. So that the confusion will only be compounded. Okay, but whatever. Still, I like Daily Magic, formerly Clever Mojo. I like their design work. I like their graphic design is really amazing, and their artwork is usually phenomenal, and it certainly is in this case. So, let's check it out. In Villages of Valeria, players are trying to get points. Points are going to come from getting these different buildings in front of you and or heroes. You can see each hero and building is worth a certain number of points, and some people are going to be worth more points than that. So you can see, for example, here, the monk is going to be 1 for each one of these symbols that you have on buildings in front of you. Now, players are going to start with one building, which is a castle, and they're all pretty much the same, just different artwork. And they're also going to be starting with a resource. Every building card in the game is a building or a resource. So you'll start with it like that. The building doesn't matter anymore. Now it allows you to spend a gold to get a wild resource, or to spend a gold to get a magic resource. There are several resources in the game. There's a finite number of gold in the game based on the number of players. Each player is going to start with some gold. Each player is going to start with one resource in their castle, and they're going to start with a hand of cards. Now, one player is going to be chosen to go first, and play goes around clockwise. On a player's turn, they get this card and the castle. They're going to pick one of these actions on the card. When they pick that action, each other player in clockwise order can also follow that action, although the following action is never as good as the person who picks the action themselves. So for example, harvest action, if I pick that action, I can draw 3 cards. I can draw them from the draw pile and or one of these 5 discard piles here. If you ever draw from a discard pile and there's nothing there, you'll replace it. But as the game goes by, cards will be discarded to the various piles. So you can draw from them or from the top of the deck. So whoever picks this action, harvest, will draw 3 cards. Each other person can follow and draw 1 card. Develop action allows you to take a card from your hand and add it in front of you as a resource as part of your castle. You have to discard another card to do so. Each player who follows can also develop, but they need to discard 2 other cards to develop. Build allows you to build a card from your hand. To build a card from your hand, you need to spend the resources to build that card. So this one needs a wood, a stone, and 2 magic. So players will use coins that they have and place them on open spots to get those. So here I have a wood, a magic, and I can use this as a stone, but that's not enough to build that building. I need another magic. Well, if someone else has a magic resource in front of them, let's say someone else had this in front of their castle and it was open, I could use it. However, because I'm putting the coin in front of that person, at the beginning of every player's turn, they take all the coins off their cards. I'm essentially paying them a coin to use a resource that I might not get back. When a player builds a building, they place that building in front of them. Many buildings have instant effects. So for example here, the smithy gives you a coin. The witch's hut allows you to immediately discard a card to get a coin. The archery range allows you to draw 3 cards, which looks amazing, but realize it's worth 0 points at the end of the game. Some cards will give you special abilities. This one, from now on, every time I build, I have a free magic. The cleric, every time I tax, I will get an extra card and a coin. So your abilities can be built up. So when a player chooses the action build, they will build a building and they get a card. Each other person can build a building also, but they don't get the card. Then there's recruit. Recruit is taking one of these characters down here. To take a character, you need to have buildings with this matching symbol. So here I need to have 2 magic buildings or holy buildings and 1 building with that symbol on it. If I do, I'll get the cleric, who's worth a point and helps me out when I tax. Whenever you recruit, the person who chooses the action has to pay a coin to get that character. Each other person has to pay 2 coins back to the bank. And then the last action is tax. If you choose this one, you get a coin from the bank and a card. Everyone who follows simply gets a card. Coins are finite, so eventually the coins might be from the bank, but they'll be going back into the bank, usually with the recruit action. This will continue until players have a certain number of cards in front of them. That number of cards depends on the number of players in the game. The back of the rule book is very handy showing you that information. And once that happens, players will then add up all the points on their cards, plus the gold coins that they have are worth a point, and whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. Okay, so the Valeria card kingdoms, in my review of that, it was very similar to Machikoro. It was a riff on Machikoro to many degrees. It just changed a lot of things, but it was very obvious they were similar. The same thing is the case here. Maybe this is Daily Magic shtick, where Villages of Valeria is going to be very much compared to other games like Race for the Galaxy, Glory to Rome. There's even a little bit of Imperial Settlers in here. Not a bad thing necessarily, right? A game needs to stand on its own 2 feet, and there's nothing wrong with cribbing stuff from other games. And so that definitely has happened here. This is a game in which you are choosing an action, everyone else chooses the action after you, but they don't get as good of a thing as you do. This was something that was popularized with Puerto Rico and San Juan. It's the same thing here. It's a good thing. It's a fun thing in games, right? You're picking something, everyone's like, oh, you picked that? Good, I'll do that action too. I was about to pick that action, I'll do it now. The problem is the secondary actions are never as good as the first one. Sometimes they're obvious. If someone's going to take 3 cards, of course I'll draw a card. What do I care? I mean, there's a hand limit of 8 cards in this game, and you have to discard down to 8 after your action, but for the most part, it's a good thing to take cards. But other ones are more thinky, right? They're going to develop, so they're going to put out a resource and discard a card. I can do the same thing, but I have to discard 2 cards, but I was planning to build this building. I could discard these cards, but I don't know, there's just, I have to decide whether it's important to do, but if I don't do it, I'm getting fewer actions than all the other players. And deciding how many of these you can't do all the extra actions, or even if you do, you're going to be paying more resources, so it's not efficient. But you cannot just do actions on your turn, because then you will have fewer actions than everyone else. So I like that. That's a good balance. The balance is even a little bit more pronounced in a higher player count. This is a game that comes with solo rules, which I have not played, all right, but goes up to 5 players. And a 5-player game is very different than a 2-player game. In fact, we've done a 2-player game of this live that you can watch me playing Melody in this game, but that was a very different feeling than playing with 4 or 5 was, just because when one person is taking action and it's my turn right away, I'm usually not going to follow the other person, but I might. With 4 or 5 players, I have to seriously consider who I'm going to follow because there's a lot more actions to follow. As I said, the artwork in this game is phenomenal. The graphic design is easy, it's clear. You get going right away. You always feel like there's some of the different actions, there's always at least a good one to take. Gold is limited at first. You start with 3, but you want to get more as time goes by. The building, the action gets really intriguing when there's certainly more than 2 players, because if you're going to be going 4th building, there's probably not enough resources left even on your own. However, if people are using your own, that means you get more money on your turn, so you could build on your turn and do some great things. The way the money is used to use other people's resources back and forth is a good closed economy system. The cards themselves, they make thematic sense. I am especially a big fan of the cards that let you, the instant bonuses are nice, but the cards that let you kind of increase how good an action is for you, that's really good. Now, I think the game could be more enjoyable for me. This is a very lightweight game. It's very easy to get into. And as I said at the beginning, this game is going to be compared to Race for the Galaxy and Glory of Rome. It's certainly not as complex as them. It's very easy to jump into. And I can't fault it for being easy. That's a good thing. It's good to have these kind of streamlined games for people to jump into. In fact, there's a game that just came out called Jump Drive, which is a great game as an intro to Race for the Galaxy. This is almost a better intro than that game is to Race for the Galaxy. But I do wish, and this is probably just for me, I wish there was a little more. Like, there's a lot of cool things. Like, ooh, when I play this card, I get +2 cards when I build it. When I play this card, I get +1 gold. Ooh, I got a really cool engine, and then the game ends. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I had a really cool engine that I was going to use, but the game ended. I wish there was more cards. I wish there was more diversity amongst the building, more buildings that did unique, interesting things. I definitely wish there were more of the character cards. There's not that many of them, and that's fine. Again, none of this doesn't make the game work, but I wanted to see more. I'd like to see maybe a special ability per player and stuff. And I know there was extra Kickstarter stuff, and maybe that stuff is there. This is just the base game I'm talking about, and this stuff could easily be added in expansions. But that's what I would be looking for from Villages of Valeria, for me. But it's still a fine game. This is a game that a lot of people, this is almost like gateway card roll selection style game, where you're going to say, okay, what are you going to do? Everyone else follows, and it's easy. The game comes with very clear reference cards that not only show you what all the symbols mean, and then on the back explain the actions very clearly. This is great. This is a good design. This is a game that I could easily get to people who've played very few board games, and I know that they could jump into it. So, cool. This is 2 for 2 for Daily Magic Games. It'll be interesting to see what they do next. I'm sure the name Valeria will be on it, but who knows what the kind of game is. Either way, we know it's going to be amazing graphic design and art and a solid game. I'm sure of it, because that's what this one is. Dice Tower Judgment, approved!
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.